वेलकम फ्रेंड्स टू लिटरेचर मंत्रा। आई एम हर्ष सिंह और आज का टॉपिक ऑफ डिस्कशन है मोस्ट एक्सपेक्टेड MCQs फॉर MA इंग्लिश एंट्रेंस एग्जाम एंड इन दिस वीडियो वी विल फोकस ऑन लिटरेरी क्रिटिसिज्म एंड लिटरेरी थ्योरी। सो अगर आप अपने नॉलेज को फाइन ट्यून करना चाहते हैं रिगार्डिंग लिटरेरी थ्योरी देन डू वॉच दिस वीडियो, इट विल हेल्प यू इन योर MA इंग्लिश एंट्रेंस एग्जाम। इस वीडियो को मैंने 2 पार्ट्स में डिवाइड किया है, प्रैक्टिस टेस्ट 2 जो कि ये वाला है एंड प्रैक्टिस टेस्ट 3 जिसका लिंक डिस्क्रिप्शन में नीचे दिया हुआ है। बोथ ऑफ देम आर ऑन लिटरेरी थ्योरी। सो लेट्स बिगिन एंड वन स्मॉल रिक्वेस्ट, आफ्टर योर एग्जाम इज ओवर अगर आपके पास क्वेश्चन पेपर का PDF है या वेब लिंक हो या क्वेश्चन पेपर का URL हो then please forward that on our WhatsApp number given below and as soon as we get the questions we will analyze it and upload the solutions probably the same day or the next day. Okay? नए अपडेट्स के लिए आप हमें फॉलो कर सकते हैं फेसबुक पर या इंस्टाग्राम पर या यूट्यूब पर और लिटरेचर मंत्रा के साथ जुड़ना ना भूलें, भारत का एकमात्र फ्री ऑनलाइन प्रिपरेशन प्लेटफॉर्म UGC-NET के लिए और इंग्लिश लिटरेचर से जुड़े हुए सभी एग्जाम्स के लिए। Now, first question is Marxist literary criticism stresses that 1. Class is an imaginary concept, then 2. The economy is the final determinant of cultural production, 3. Texts reveal the economic conditions of the time in which they were written, 4th. The critic should see the work as self-sufficient. पहले consider करते हैं first option, class is an imaginary concept. Now, कार्ल मार्क्स का एक फेमस कोटेशन है दैट हिस्ट्री इज अ सीरीज ऑफ क्लास स्ट्रगल्स। सो ये स्टेटमेंट जो है क्लास इज एन इमेजिनरी कॉन्सेप्ट इज रॉन्ग। इनफैक्ट मार्क्सिज्म टॉक्स अ लॉट अबाउट क्लास। ओके, एंड देन नेक्स्ट ऑप्शन इज द इकोनॉमी इज द फाइनल डिटर्मिनेंट ऑफ कल्चरल प्रोडक्शन। दिस सीम्स टू बी राइट। ठीक है, नाउ अगला स्टेटमेंट देखते हैं, टेक्स्ट रिवील द इकोनॉमिक कंडीशंस ऑफ द टाइम इन विच दे वर रिटन। नाउ दिस ऑल्सो सीम्स टू बी करेक्ट। Now the fourth option is the critic should see the work as self-sufficient. Now this is totally wrong. Why? Because see, ये जो statement है the critic should see the work as self-sufficient, ये formalism या new criticism में use हो सकता है, but not in Marxism because Marxism also considers the context of a text or the historical conditions or the biographical details. So these things are also considered under Marxism. So fourth option is wrong. And the only option is number 2, which is the economy is the final determinant and the text reveal the economic conditions. So number 2 is the right answer, 2 and 3. Okay. Now next question is, this was a path-breaking feminist essay written in the 1970s which used hybrid terms like sext and chiasmos. Identify the author. First option is Luce Irigaray, second Helene Sixju, third Julia Kristeva, fourth option is Simone de Beauvoir. Now this is a very straightforward question and the answer is second Helene Sixju. And ये जो hybrid terms हैं it came out in the essay called The Laugh of Medusa. और मैंने ये क्वेश्चन इसलिए चुना है बिकॉज दिस इज अ वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट एसे इन द फील्ड ऑफ फेमिनिज्म। सो हो सकता है कि ये क्वेश्चन ना आए बट आपसे ये पूछ दें कि हु रोट द लाफ ऑफ मेडुसा। सो द आंसर शुड बी हेलेन सिक्सजू। नाउ नेक्स्ट क्वेश्चन इज विच ऑफ द फॉलोइंग बेस्ट समराइजेज द स्ट्रक्चरल अप्रोच टू लिटरेचर। फर्स्ट ऑप्शन, मीनिंग इज इनहेरेंट इन द वर्ड इटसेल्फ। सेकंड, अ लैंग्वेज इज history explains how it works. Third, meaning is generated through relationships in a system of signs. Fourth, binary oppositions are to be avoided at all costs. Now आंसर डिस्कस करने से पहले मैं एक सिंपल सा आइडिया समझाता हूँ आपको लैंग्वेज के बारे में, हाउ द स्ट्रक्चरलिस्ट्स व्यू लैंग्वेज। नाउ लैंग्वेज इज कंसिडर्ड as a self-contained relational structure. Okay, self-contained relational structure in structuralism. And the elements of language, for example, words, letters, can be understood only in relation to each other and to the system, overall system. And as I said, the elements in language are relational to one another. मतलब ये कि no word has any absolute meaning. Whatever meaning a word has, for example, a pen. So a pen is a pen because it is not a table, it is not a chair, it is not a spoon, etc., etc. So meaning is not absolute. We understand any word due to its relation with other words or other elements in that language. Okay, so this is the basic idea of structuralism with respect to language. और इसके बाद आता है जैक्स डेरिडा का idea of difference. Now Jacques Derrida will go one step ahead. मतलब Jacques Derrida will say that अगर सब कुछ relationally है और absolute है ही नहीं तो इसका मतलब है कि meaning is eternally deferred. तभी Derrida ने coin किया था word difference. Okay, but of course that is a different story. So let's see the question. So first था meaning is inherent in the word itself. This is wrong. A language's history explains how it works. No, not at all. Because इन सब चीज़ों को consider नहीं करता. Then meaning is generated through relationships in a system of science. Of course, this is true. Then last one is binary oppositions are to be avoided at all costs. No. Binary oppositions can't be avoided, na? Because as I said, that the elements in language derive their meaning through relationships. They are relational. So how can you avoid binary oppositions? They can't be avoided, na? You understand? Okay. So let's move on to the next question. Now, who among the following theorists holds that metaphor and metonymy are the two fundamental structures of language? First option, Ferdinand de Saussure, then J.L. Austin, third Roman Jakobson, and fourth is Victor Shklovsky. Now, the first option, Ferdinand de Saussure, is not related to this. Okay. Second option, J.L. Austin. Now, J.L. Austin is related to speech acts, his theories about speech acts. Then Roman Jakobson is the one who is related to metaphor and metonymy. Fourth, Victor Shklovsky, he is related to the idea of defamiliarization. Okay, defamiliarization. So correct option is Roman Jakobson. Now a little bit more about Roman Jakobson's metaphor and metonymy. Normally जब हम लोग literature में कुछ भी पढ़ते हैं तो it is mostly related to theory. It is limited to theory. We hardly get to read anything which is graphical or something which has been conveyed to us through charts, right? Mostly that is limited to the field or the realm of physics, maths, and those kind of subjects. But here we have a gentleman, Roman Jakobson. What he did was he tried to illustrate his idea about metaphor and metonymy using a graph. Okay, that is why I wanted to mention this. Jakobson says that on the y-axis it is the metaphor and on the x-axis it is the metonymy. And then he goes on to describe how meaning is formed when one axis is transposed onto the other one. Okay, so his theory is related to this. So the correct answer here is number 3, Roman Jakobson. Now next question is, according to Roland Barthes, the writerly text is a unique expression of the writer's individual genius, consumed by the way of a seemingly unitary meaning. Then third, linked to active participation of the reader in the establishment of the text's meaning. And fourth is immediately accessible to the reader. Now मैं पहले बताता हूँ आपको कि what does writerly text mean, and his other idea was readerly text. So what do these readerly text and writerly text actually mean? Now first of all, understand that this idea was first of all mentioned in his book S/Z. You might have heard about this, SZ, which was published in 1970. So roughly क्या readerly or writerly text है, that if a text is called readerly according to Barthes, it means that it is easy to understand and it doesn't demand any kind of hard work or any kind of thinking on the part of the reader. Whereas if a text or a novel is called writerly, is classified as writerly, it will require a lot of thinking on the part of the reader. For example, अगर एक example के लिए ले लें Jane Austen's novels, they are pretty simple and straightforward. Anyone who reads Jane Austen can easily understand her meaning, what actually the novel means. But suppose you are reading a novel of James Joyce, like Ulysses, or another novel like Finnegan's Wake, then it becomes very difficult to understand because it is not, the meaning of the text or the novel is not clear. It has multiple meanings. It can have multiple meanings. Okay, so that kind of text or novel is called writerly text. Something which is difficult to understand, something which requires some understanding on the part of the reader, that is called a writerly text. Okay, now the question. Now first option जो है unique expression of a writer's individual genius, ये नहीं हो सकता. Then consumed by way of a seemingly unitary meaning, maybe linked to active participation of the reader in the establishment of the text's meaning. Now this can be the right answer. Okay, immediately accessible to the reader. Now fourth option तो एकदम गलत. First option भी गलत. Second option is consumed by way of seemingly unitary meaning. पहली बात तो ये unitary meaning यहीं पे आपको पहचान लेना चाहिए कि ये गलत है, because as I said, जैसे कि Ulysses है या Finnegan's Wake है, उसमें मल्टीपल मीनिंग्स होते हैं. सो ये यूनिटरी मीनिंग जो ये यहाँ पे फ्रेज है ये गलत है. सो दिस ऑप्शन इज रॉन्ग. द ओनली ऑप्शन करेक्ट हियर इज नंबर 3, दैट writerly text is one which is linked to active participation of the reader. Okay, Now next question is, what is used as vehicle in the sentence the camel is the ship of the desert? Now पहले मैं आपको बता दूं कि vehicle कहते किसे हैं. Now tenor and vehicle are two components of metaphor. Okay, tenor and vehicle. Now this was first used by I.A. Richards. So अब आते हैं कि tenor कहते किसे हैं और vehicle कहते किसे हैं. Now just as it happens in a metaphor, now tenor is the one or the person who is being described, and vehicle is the object that is used to describe the person. Okay, so broadly this is the idea. For example, consider this line: oh, my love is a red, red rose. Now here love is the one that is being described, and red rose, I mean the rose is the object that is being used to describe love. Okay, so here love is the tenor and the object that is being used to describe love, rose, is the vehicle. So similarly यहाँ पे question है, the camel is the ship of the desert. So camel जो है, the camel is being described in terms of the ship. Okay, so camel here is the tenor and ship is the vehicle. So answer is number 1, ship. Next question is, from among the following, identify the incorrect observation regarding Ferdinand de Saussure's seminal distinction between lingua and parole. Now options पढ़ने से पहले मैं आपको ये समझा देता हूँ कि lingua and parole में difference क्या है और broadly किसे कहते हैं. Now lingua refers to the rules and conventions behind a speech system or a language, for instance. So lingua is the set of rules and conventions that underlie or are there in a particular signifying system. And language is also a signifying system. So the rules which make up that system are referred to as lingua. Parole उसे कहते हैं कि individual speech acts. So using the lingua, using the rules and conventions, we speak. So that is parole. So broadly this is the idea. Okay. Now let's read the options. The first option is, parole is the particular language system, the elements of which we learn as children and which is codified in our grammars and dictionaries, whereas lingua is the language occasion, what A says to B. इसमें opposite है, उल्टा दिया हुआ है इसमें, ये होना चाहिए, opposite होना चाहिए. So this option is wrong. Let's check the next option. Second option is, a language consists in the interrelationships between lingua and parole. ये ऐसा लगता है कि it seems correct. Now third option is, Saussure made this crucial distinction in a study called A Course in General Linguistics, 1916. This is also correct. Fourth option is, lingua is the particular language system, the elements of which we learn as children and which is codified in our grammars and dictionaries, whereas parole is the language occasion, what A says to B. So जैसा कि मैंने आपको बताया था अभी, that lingua is the rules or the grammar and parole is the speech act. So fourth is correct, third is correct, second is correct, but question में कह रहा है कि identify the incorrect observation. So one is incorrect and so this is the answer, number 1. Now next question is, who among the following is not associated with Russian formalism? Now pay attention to the question. It says not associated. So let's check the options. Now first option is Roman Jacobson, second Georges Poulet, third Boris Eckenbaum and fourth Victor Shklovsky. Now पहले तो मैं आपको बता दूं कि who is associated with Russian formalism. Now Roman Jacobson is associated, Victor Shklovsky is associated and Boris Eckenbaum is also associated. The only person who is not associated with Russian formalism is Georges Poulet. Now then, what is Georges Poulet famous for? Now Georges Poulet is famous for his criticism of consciousness. Now what do I mean by criticism of consciousness? Basically he wants the reader to rethink and recreate the author's own expression. So just understand broadly what Poulet is talking about. Okay, that to rethink and recreate the author's own expression and not to limit his understanding, I mean the reader's understanding, to the text. This is what Poulet says. Now another way of expressing this might be that his criticism or criticism of consciousness requires the reader to open his or her mind to the consciousness of the author. Okay, so here the correct answer is number 2, Georges Poulet. Now next question is, which of the following does not describe some of the practices, beliefs of feminist literary criticism? Now first option is, feminist criticism recuperates female writers ignored by the canon. Second option is, feminist literary critics offer a criticism of the construction of gender. Okay. Third option is, feminist literary critics argue that the traditional canon is justified. Okay. Then fourth is, feminist literary critics mostly reject the essentializing of male and female. नाउ अगर आप ये देखें तो फर्स्ट ऑप्शन दैट इट रिक्यूपरेट्स फीमेल राइटर्स इग्नोर्ड बाय द कैनन, मतलब ट्रेडिशनल कैनन, दिस इज करेक्ट. नाउ सेकेंड ऑप्शन इज critics offer a criticism of the construction of gender. Yes, this is also correct because feminist literary critics say that gender is a sociological construct. मतलब वो natural नहीं है, it has been constructed by society. So number 2 is also correct. Now number 3 is feminist literary critics argue that the traditional canon is justified. Now number 1 और number 3 जो है ये contradictory है. Number 1 में कह रहा है कि it recuperates writers which have been ignored. थर्ड ऑप्शन में ये कह रहा है कि feminist literary critics argue that the traditional canon is justified. Now अगर traditional canon अगर justified होता तो चेंज करने की जरूरत ही क्यों पड़ती? So either 1 is correct or 3 is correct, but of course you know number 1 is correct and number 3 is wrong. And fourth is feminist literary critics mostly reject the essentializing of male and female. Yes, this is also correct. But question अगर आप पढ़ें तो it is asking which of the following does not describe. तो does not describe में number 3 है. This is incorrect. So this is the answer number 3. Okay. Now next question is who among the following theorists talks about the circulation of social energy? A. Raymond Williams, B. Stephen Greenblatt, C. Antonio Gramsci, and D. Hayden White. Now this is a very simple question and the correct answer is B. Stephen Greenblatt. This is simple because this is a subtitle of one of his books and the title of his book is Shakespearean Negotiations and the subtitle is The Circulation of Social Energy in Renaissance England. So the answer is Stephen Greenblatt. Now next question is match the columns, match the terms with the theorists. Now terms hai, the first is Apollonian and Dionysian, second fancy imagination, third Hellenism, Hebraism, fourth inscape and instress. And the name of the theorists are Matthew Arnold, Friedrich Nietzsche, J.H. Hopkins and S.T. Coleridge. Now Coleridge का नाम आते ही ये simple समझ में आ गया, fancy and imagination, S.T. Coleridge. Then Hellenism, Hebraism, very famous in Matthew Arnold's Culture and Anarchy. So number 3 का है number 1 Matthew Arnold. और अब आते हैं फर्स्ट ऑप्शन पे अपोलोनियन एंड डायोनीजियन. नाउ दिस आइडिया वाज प्रपोज्ड बाय फ्रेडरिक नीच इन हिज वर्क द बर्थ ऑफ ट्रेजेडी. ओके, नाउ अपोलोनियन और डायोनीजियन का मतलब क्या है? नाउ दिस इज बेसिकली रिलेटेड टू ग्रीक माइथोलॉजी. ओके, एंड इन ग्रीक माइथोलॉजी देयर इज अ गॉड कॉल्ड अपोलो एंड देयर इज आल्सो अ गॉड कॉल्ड डायोनीसस. एंड अपोलो बेसिकली स्टैंड्स फॉर और अपहोल्ड्स ऑर्डर और रैशनल थिंकिंग और लॉजिक, वेयरएज Dionysus जो है that is the god of wine और emotions और irrationality. Okay, so a kind of indiscipline. तो इस तरीके से आप समझो इसको. So उसी से Apollonian निकल के आया है word. And Apollonian means something which is related to reason, culture, restraint, and Dionysian means irrationality or a kind of indiscipline or passion. That is what Dionysian is, and this is an idea proposed by Friedrich Nietzsche in his work The Birth of Tragedy. And then last one is inscape and instress. Now this idea has been proposed by Hopkins. So number 3. So answer is A 2413. ये option correct option है, the first option. Okay. Now ये question मैंने इसलिए choose किया है because these ideas are very important in the field of literary criticism. And broadly बाकी भी मैं समझा देता हूँ. I've already explained Apollonian and Dionysian. ठीक है, एंड फैंसी एंड इमेजिनेशन, बेसिकली फैंसी को इस तरीके से समझो कि दैट्स अ लेसर फॉर्म ऑफ इमेजिनेशन, और लेट्स से इमेजिनेशन इज अ हायर फॉर्म ऑफ फैंसी. मतलब ये द पावर टू क्रिएट. सो इन फैंसी व्हाट हैपन्स इज रीअसेंबलिंग, अ काइंड ऑफ रीअसेंबलिंग होता है इसमें. इन इमेजिनेशन व्हाट हैपन्स इज imagination not only assembles but it also creates. So it has the power to create something new out of those many old things, and this kind of creation is far more sophisticated, far more refined. इस तरीके से आप समझो इसको, मतलब broadly, in broad terms. Of course there are some other features of imagination and fancy, but in broad terms मैं आपको समझाने की कोशिश कर रहा हूँ. Now then is Hellenism and Hebraism. Now, as Matthew Arnold describes in Culture and Anarchy, Hellenism is basically to see things as they really are, or it can also refer to spontaneity of consciousness. मतलब इसको इस तरीके से समझो कि spontaneity, that is what Hellenism refers to. And then Hebraism is basically observing rules or strictness or obedience उसे कहते हैं Hebraism. And the phrase which Matthew Arnold uses is strictness of conscience. Okay, so that is what Hebraism is. Now next comes inscape and instress. This was proposed by Hopkins. Now in broad terms, let me explain what inscape is. Now inscape कहते हैं किसी के यूनिकनेस को या डिस्टिंक्टिवनेस को, उसे कहते हैं inscape. और instress किसे कहते हैं? The energy that holds the inscape together. मतलब ये कि if suppose there is a object which is kind of complex but unified. Now what is that energy that holds that together? That energy which holds that object together is called instress. So broadly ये मतलब है इन सारे terms का. See, मैंने broadly इसलिए समझाया है because अगर मैं डिटेल्स में जाऊंगा तो लेक्चर बहुत लंबा हो जाएगा. That's why I've tried to simplify it as much as possible. With this, I conclude this video and don't forget to see the next part. It will help you in your MA entrance exam. और next part का link नीचे दिया हुआ है description में. Okay?